My name's Josie Henrie, and in this video we're going to be talking about a wonderful composer. Her name is Amy Beach, and this is exactly what she looked like. So Amy Beach was born September 5th, 1867, and she was born in New Hampshire. And she was a classical music composer, so just like Beethoven or Bach, she wrote classical music. But the thing that was really, really unique about her is that she is American and she's a woman. And that really definitely wasn't common back then. And so Amy Beach, she didn't just decide one day that she wanted to be a composer. She had been working on it throughout her whole lifetime. When she was a really little girl, her family noticed that she was really good at singing, and they were like, wow, she has a natural talent for music, and they didn't really know where it came from or why she was like that, but she just had it. Back then, it was different because everybody kind of did the same thing. So the men would go out and they'd make the money, and their wife would stay at home and do all of the household chores. And so she married this surgeon, and even though she was a wonderful musician and a wonderful composer, she didn't go out and make money off of that. So her husband was out making all the money, and she, which it's kind of a blessing to her, but she was able to use her talent as a talent instead of using it as a way to make money. So one of the most famous pieces that she's composed, it's Symphony in E minor, and that's also known as the Gaelic Symphony. And so I spent a lot of time listening to it and going over it, and now we're going to do that together. We're going to go over the Gaelic Symphony and talk about some of the things that make it unique and what musicians or musician students should look for in this piece. Together we're going to watch the first movement of Amy Beach's Gaelic Symphony. So in this symphony, there's 4 different movements, and so in this first movement you can kind of tell just from listening to it that there's a lot of energy, and the musicians are playing with a lot of energy. As we skip towards the middle of the first movement, we hear the clarinets in their solo. The clarinets bring a calm sense into the piece because they have the melody and they're soft, and so it makes it sound less stressful than it was before. Now we're going to skip a little more towards the end of the first movement, and all of the instruments, they start to play more forte and more dramatic, and so just listen for that, and you can start to hear the French horn. And the French horn is really unique because when it plays, it kind of sounds very triumphant, and there has been a hero in this story. And so listen for the French horn and think about how that could kind of tell a story to the mind of the listener. That was the first movement of Amy Beach's Gaelic Symphony, and now we're going to listen to the second movement. So if you imagine the first movement and then think of kind of what would be the complete opposite of that, that's what the second movement is going to be. So this piece is being played by a completely different orchestra, and we're going to be able to experience the different sounds that come from each of the musicians. Movement 2 of the Gaelic Symphony is titled Allegro Vivace, and so that translates to quick and lively. But as you listen to the beginning of movement 2, it's not very quick or lively. So it's going to be kind of slow and steady, so it's a nice break for the musicians here, and we will go ahead and listen to that. About 2 minutes into the second movement, the piece starts to get a lot faster and keep up to its name of Allegro Vivace. You can see the composer speed everyone up. At this part, the violinists are playing so quickly that it almost sounds like they want to race. We're going to skip about 4.5 minutes into the second movement, where we'll find a long rest written by Amy Beach. And she composed this in here in a way that the musicians would have to look at their director to know when the long rest is going to end. And then they can pick up and start playing again. So listen for this rest and watch them as they come back into the second movement. Towards the end of the second movement, we hear very staccato notes. These musicians have to look at the director to know how long their staccato notes should last. Those last 3 notes at the end of the second movement were the staccato notes that we were talking about. And they kind of just end the second movement in a very nice way. And we're going to now move on to the third movement.
As we probably expect, the third movement is a lot different from the first and second movements. So the third movement is even more dramatic and more slow than the other ones that we've listened to so far.
After a long, slow piece, Amy Beach ends the third movement by composing one long, held-out note. So we're going to skip to the end of the third movement, and you can hear this orchestra play that long, held-out note as kind of their grand finale to the third movement.
The Gaelic Symphony by Amy Beach only has 4 movements, and so now we're moving on to the 4th and final movement. And Amy Beach uses this as her grand finale. So you can imagine a grand finale, and what comes to mind, at least for me, is brass instrument. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all about Amy Beach and her symphony in E minor. And if there's one thing that I've learned from Amy Beach, it's that we should go and use our talents for good. So even though composing music wasn't her number one income, she still used it as a talent so that she could help other people to enjoy music, and so she could enjoy music. So go listen to Amy Beach's music. She's composed a lot more symphonies than just the one. And thank you for watching. Bye.